Technological transformation. The AI revolution. Not all of Baba Vanga's predictions for America in 2025 are catastrophic. She also foresaw a period of extraordinary technological advancement, particularly in artificial intelligence and human-machine integration, that will begin to fundamentally transform society even as other crises unfold. According to her vision, 2025 marks the emergence of AI systems that demonstrate capabilities previously considered impossible, leading to both tremendous opportunities and existential questions about humanity's future relationship with the technologies we've created. This prediction aligns remarkably well with current technological trajectories. We're already witnessing exponential growth in AI capabilities, with systems like GPT-4 and Claude demonstrating reasoning abilities that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. Major tech companies are investing billions in developing ever more sophisticated AI models, with capabilities doubling approximately every 6 months. Vanga specifically mentioned a breakthrough in what she called thinking machines that would emerge first in America before spreading globally. She described these systems as possessing capabilities that would make humans question what it means to be human, a prescient observation about the philosophical implications of advanced AI. What makes this prediction particularly significant is how it intersects with America's other challenges. As economic systems falter and political institutions struggle, technological advancement accelerates, creating a society simultaneously experiencing breakdown and breakthrough. For ordinary Americans, this technological transformation will create both opportunity and displacement. Vanga foresaw dramatic workforce disruption as AI systems become capable of performing not just routine tasks, but complex cognitive work previously reserved for highly educated professionals. Legal research, medical diagnosis, financial analysis, and creative production, all fields she specifically mentioned as transformed by 2025. Most intriguingly, she suggested this technological revolution would eventually offer solutions to the very crises it initially exacerbates. Advanced AI systems applied to climate modeling, for instance, will provide unprecedented insight into environmental systems, potentially helping address the water-related disasters she predicted. Similarly, new economic models enabled by AI and related technologies will emerge to replace failing financial systems. However, this transition period will be deeply disruptive. Vanga warned of a great sorting, where society divides between those who can adapt to technological change and those left behind. This technological inequality will initially worsen existing social divisions before potentially offering paths to their resolution. She also predicted specific technological developments that seemed fantastical when she first described them, but now appear increasingly plausible. Direct brain-computer interfaces becoming commercially available, allowing humans to interact with digital systems through thought alone. Autonomous transportation networks replacing traditional vehicle ownership in major cities. Breakthroughs in energy production that begin to address climate challenges. Medical diagnostic systems more accurate than human physicians becoming widely accessible. What's most remarkable about these predictions is how they've accelerated from science fiction to emerging reality within just the past few years. The timeline Vanga suggested, with 2025 as the inflection point for these technologies, increasingly aligns with projections from leading technologists and research institutions. For America, this technological transformation represents both challenge and opportunity. While other aspects of Vanga's prediction suggest a nation in crisis, the technological leadership she foresaw provides potential pathways to renewal and reinvention if Americans can navigate the difficult transition period ahead. Global realignment. America's changing role. Baba Vanga's predictions for America in 2025 extend beyond domestic challenges to encompass a fundamental shift in the global order, one that significantly alters America's position and influence in the world. According to her vision, We will witness a rapid realignment of international power structures that transforms alliances, economic relationships, and security arrangements that have defined the post-World War II era. At the center of this realignment is what Vanga described as a great humbling for America, a period when the nation's relative power and influence diminish not through military defeat, but through a combination of internal challenges and the rise of alternative power centers. This doesn't mean America ceases to be a global power, but rather that it must adapt to a world where it is one significant player among several rather than the undisputed hegemon. The signs of this shift are already becoming apparent. China's economic and technological rise continues despite recent challenges, with GDP projections suggesting it will surpass the United States in total economic output within the decade. Russia has demonstrated its willingness to directly challenge Western security arrangements in Europe. India is emerging as both an economic powerhouse and a diplomatic player increasingly willing to chart an independent course between competing power blocs. Vanga specifically foresaw a new grouping of nations that emerges as a counterweight to traditional Western-led institutions like NATO, the IMF, and the World Bank. This aligns remarkably well with the ongoing expansion of organizations like BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which have explicitly positioned themselves as alternatives to Western-dominated global governance structures. Most significantly, she predicted a fundamental challenge to the dollar-based international financial system that has underpinned American power since the Bretton Woods Agreement. According to her vision, 2025 marks a critical tipping point when alternative payment systems and reserve currencies gain sufficient traction to create a genuinely multipolar financial order. For ordinary Americans, this global realignment has profound implications. The economic advantages that come with issuing the world's reserve currency, what economists call the exorbitant privilege, have helped fund America's high standard of living despite persistent trade deficits. As this system evolves, Americans will need to adjust to a world where imports cost more, international influence requires greater compromise, and military predominance faces both financial constraints and effective counter-strategies. Vanga's prediction suggests this transition will be challenging but ultimately necessary for America's long-term renewal. She spoke of a period of withdrawal and reflection, when America turns inward to address domestic challenges before eventually emerging with a different but still significant global role. This aligns with historical patterns of great power adaptation and renewal throughout history. Particularly noteworthy is her prediction about changing alliance structures. According to Vanga, traditional American allies will pursue greater strategic autonomy, developing independent capabilities and diplomatic relationships, rather than simply following Washington's lead. We're already seeing early evidence of this shift in Europe's pursuit of strategic autonomy and increasingly independent policies from long-standing partners like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and even South Korea. For Americans accustomed to their country's dominant global position, this realignment may initially feel like decline. However, Vanga's prophecy suggests it's better understood as transformation, a necessary adjustment to a more complex, multipolar world where power is more widely distributed, and maintaining influence requires adaptation rather than simply projecting force. How to prepare? Practical steps for what's coming. Given the sobering nature of Baba Vanga's predictions for America in 2025, the most important question becomes, how can ordinary Americans prepare for the challenges ahead? While we can't control macro-level events, we can take practical steps to increase our resilience and position ourselves to navigate uncertain times. First and foremost, financial preparation is essential. The economic collapse Vanga foresaw requires prudent action now before crisis strikes. Diversify savings beyond traditional financial institutions. While maintaining liquid emergency funds, consider allocating resources across different asset classes that have historically preserved value during currency crises. Reduce dependence on debt, particularly variable rate obligations that become unsustainable when interest rates spike. Develop practical skills that retain value regardless of economic conditions. Repair, production, medical care, and other essential services remain valuable even when financial systems falter. Build community-based economic resilience through local production networks, skill exchanges, and mutual aid systems that can function when larger economic structures are under stress. For the environmental challenges Vanga predicted, preparation takes different forms. Assess your location's vulnerability to water-related disasters, not just current risks, but projected changes based on climate models. Ensure your home has adequate emergency supplies, including water filtration capabilities, shelf-stable food, emergency power, and medical necessities. Develop community emergency response plans that don't rely exclusively on government assistance, which may be overwhelmed during compound disasters. Consider relocation if you live in areas with extreme vulnerability to the specific water-related catastrophes Vanga foresaw. The political instability she predicted requires social rather than just material preparation. Strengthen local community bonds that transcend political divisions. Research consistently shows that communities with strong social cohesion fare better during crises regardless of their political composition. Develop information literacy skills to navigate an increasingly confusing media environment. The ability to critically evaluate sources and identify manipulation becomes essential during periods of political upheaval. Create communication redundancies that don't rely exclusively on centralized platforms or infrastructure. Maintain a balanced perspective that resists extremist ideologies, which historically gain traction during times of social stress. For the technological transformation Vanga foresaw, preparation means positioning yourself to adapt rather than resist inevitable change. Invest in developing adaptable skills that complement rather than compete with artificial intelligence. Creative problem-solving, human connection, ethical judgment, and contextual understanding remain distinctively human capabilities. Stay informed about emerging technologies without succumbing to either techno-utopianism or Luddite rejection. Balanced understanding allows for better navigation of technological change. Consider how your career and skills will interact with accelerating automation. Some fields will be disrupted earlier and more completely than others. Explore ways that technological tools can increase your personal resilience during other types of crises. Finally, Vanga's predictions about global realignment suggest Americans should prepare for a world where international travel, trade, and relations operate differently. Develop greater self-sufficiency in essential goods and services that may become less available or more expensive as global supply chains reconfigure. Consider the implications of a potentially weaker dollar for personal, financial, and travel plans. Pay attention to shifting international relationships that may affect everything from tourism to business opportunities. Remain flexible in your understanding of America's global role, neither clinging to unrealistic expectations of continued hegemony, nor surrendering to decline narratives. While these preparations may seem daunting, they share common themes of increased resilience, community connection, skill development, and adaptability. Even if Vanga's specific predictions don't materialize exactly as foreseen, these preparations create value regardless of future outcomes. The most effective preparation isn't just about surviving potential crises. It's about positioning yourself to navigate change and uncertainty with confidence and clarity. The hope beyond the crisis. Despite the troubling nature of Baba Vanga's predictions for America in 2025, her full prophecy contains an often overlooked element of hope, a vision of renewal and transformation that emerges from the convergence of crises. According to her complete foresight, America doesn't simply experience decline, but rather undergoes a profound metamorphosis that ultimately creates the possibility for a more sustainable and equitable society. Vanga specifically spoke of a great awakening that follows the period of crisis, a fundamental reassessment of values, priorities, and systems that have proven unsustainable. This renewal isn't automatic or guaranteed, but rather depends on how Americans respond to the challenges before them. The economic collapse she predicted, while devastating in its immediate impact, creates space for reimagining financial systems that better serve human needs, rather than simply maximizing returns for a narrow segment of society. Throughout history, major economic crises have often catalyzed significant reforms that seemed impossible during periods of relative stability. The Great Depression led to Social Security, banking reforms, and labor protections that formed the foundation for widespread prosperity in subsequent decades. Similarly, the environmental catastrophe Vanga foresaw may finally overcome the political inertia that has prevented meaningful action on climate change and infrastructure renewal. Major disasters throughout American history have frequently led to significant policy responses once the human and economic costs became impossible to ignore. The Dust Bowl of the 1930s revolutionized agricultural practices and conservation policy. The burning of the Cuyahoga River catalyzed the modern environmental movement and landmark legislation. Even the political turmoil she predicted contained seeds of potential renewal. Periods of intense political conflict have sometimes led to constitutional revitalization and expanded democratic participation. The civil rights movement emerged from profound social division, yet ultimately strengthened American democracy by fulfilling more of its foundational promises. The technological transformation Vanga foresaw offers tools for addressing seemingly intractable problems. Artificial intelligence applied to climate modeling, medical research, and energy systems could help solve challenges that have resisted conventional approaches. Advanced manufacturing techniques may enable more distributed, resilient production systems, less vulnerable to global disruptions. The global realignment she predicted, while challenging America's accustomed position, creates opportunities for more sustainable international relationships based on mutual benefit rather than dominance. Throughout history, nations that have successfully navigated changing global environments have often emerged with renewed purpose and adapted influence. What makes this hopeful dimension of Vanga's prophecy particularly compelling is how it aligns with historical patterns of American resilience and reinvention. The nation has repeatedly faced existential challenges, from the Civil War to the Great Depression to the turbulent 1960s, and emerged with renewed vitality and purpose. This doesn't minimize the real suffering and disruption that accompanies such periods, but it does suggest that crisis contains the potential for renewal. For individual Americans, this hopeful dimension offers important perspective amid troubling predictions. The actions we take now not only help us navigate potential crises, but contribute to shaping what emerges from them. Community building, skill development, and ethical technology application aren't just survival strategies. They're investments in the renewal Vanga foresaw beyond the immediate challenges. The most profound aspect of her complete prophecy may be this tension between crisis and possibility, the understanding that periods of great disruption also create openings for fundamental transformation that otherwise remains blocked by inertia and vested interests. This doesn't guarantee positive outcomes, but it does mean that the future remains unwritten, shaped by countless individual and collective choices in response to evolving circumstances. Conclusion: the choice before us. As we've explored Baba Vanga's remarkable predictions for America in 2025, a complex picture emerges, not just of challenges ahead, but of fundamental choices that will determine whether these prophecies represent an ending or a beginning for America's story. The convergence of economic, environmental, political, and technological turning points creates what historians might later identify as a pivotal moment, when the decisions made by ordinary people and leaders alike set the course for decades to come. While we cannot control whether these predictions materialize exactly as foreseen, we can control our preparation, response, and the values that guide us through uncertain times. The economic reckoning Vanga predicted offers a choice between clinging to unsustainable systems or embracing models that better balance prosperity, stability, and broad participation. The environmental challenges she foresaw present a choice between continued denial and bold action to create more resilient infrastructure and communities. The political upheaval she envisioned requires choosing between destructive division and recommitment to shared democratic values, despite deep differences. The technological transformation Vanga predicted demands choices about how we integrate powerful new tools into society, whether they will concentrate power further or help address our most pressing collective challenges. The global realignment she foresaw necessitates choosing between futile attempts to maintain an unsustainable position and thoughtful adaptation to a more complex international environment. These aren't easy choices, and they won't be made once and for all, but rather through countless decisions by individuals, communities, businesses, and governments responding to evolving circumstances. What gives reason for hope amid these sobering predictions is America's demonstrated capacity for renewal and reinvention when confronted with existential challenges. Throughout its history, the nation has faced moments when continuation of existing patterns seemed impossible, requiring fundamental reassessment and change. From these crucibles, new possibilities have emerged that weren't visible before crisis struck. The generation that weathered the Great Depression not only survived, but built the institutions and norms that supported unprecedented prosperity. The Cold War confrontation with nuclear annihilation produced both technological breakthroughs and diplomatic innovations that transformed the world. Baba Vanga's prophecies for America in 2025 suggest we're approaching another such turning point. Not just a crisis to be endured, but a transformation to be shaped. The preparations discussed aren't simply about surviving difficult times, but about contributing to what emerges from them. Community building, skill development, adaptability, and commitment to foundational values represent investments in renewal beyond crisis. Whether her specific predictions manifest exactly as foreseen, the underlying message deserves serious attention. America is entering a period when continuation of business as usual is no longer sustainable. The systems, assumptions, and arrangements that have structured American life are approaching inflection points that will require adaptation regardless of one's belief in prophecy. For those who have stayed with this exploration, the most important takeaway isn't fear but clarity, recognition that significant changes are coming, and that preparation now creates both resilience during challenging times and influence over what emerges from them. The future Baba Vanga saw isn't inevitable in its details, but rather a warning that invites response and engagement. As we move towards 2025, the question isn't simply whether a mystic's predictions will come true, but whether Americans will rise to the occasion of a pivotal moment with the same courage, creativity, and commitment that has carried the nation through previous transformations. The choice belongs not to fate or prophecy, but to each of us. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of Baba Vanga's prophecies for America in 2025. If you found this video valuable, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit from this perspective. The journey ahead may be challenging, but together we can navigate it with wisdom, preparation, and hope for what lies beyond immediate difficulties.